Hello, welcome to the Ocean of Sound Summit. We are here today with our guest, Dr. Eric Winkel Shu'ayb. Dr. Winkel, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. This is wonderful.
We're very, very excited. I was just saying before we started the recording, I feel like a little kid doing cartwheels over here. I'm so very excited for this interview. And also with us, of course, is Amany, a co-host, Amany Shalaby. I'm going to begin by reading Dr. Winkel's bio, and then we'll begin our interview. Shu'ayb, Dr. Eric Winkel, was first cast onto the path, as Ibn Arabi would say, by Ralph Austin's Sufis of Andalusia. He had been reading Michel Foucault's and discovering how to look at the marginal people on various ships of fools in order to understand better what was going on in the mainstream. When he encountered the strange and wondrous people populating Ibn al-Arabi's Andalusia, he knew that he had found the answers to his questions. At 17 years of age, he proceeded to delve into Ibn al-Arabi's works as much as he could. As we proceed in this interview, if you're not familiar with Ibn al-Arabi's works, I think you'll find amazement in that sentence right there. I certainly do. When writing his dissertation, Dr. Winkel had to skip over Ibn al-Arabi. He felt that he just did not have an adequate grip on the Shaykh al-Akbar, on what the Shaykh al-Akbar was saying. Over the following years, he had the great fortune to be able to study with Arabic experts one-on-one. General language classes would not have worked. He was interested in the nuances of medieval Arabic and in reading the Arabi language of the Futuhat. Newcomers to the works of Ibn al-Arabi may not appreciate just how important and nourishing the Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi Society website was in the early days and still is. Although intellectual and academic standards were and are always met, Dr. Winkel felt that the site was clearly created by and for seekers like himself. He was immensely grateful to all who have contributed to it and helped to foster a deeper understanding of Ibn al-Arabi's teachings. While holding the position of Senior Research Fellow at the Institute of Advanced Islamic Studies, Dr. Winkel explored connections between Islam and the new sciences. He then produced articles for the Journal of the Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi Society. He's taken on this immense project to translate the works of Ibn Arabi Society, known as the Futuhat Project, and this is largely what we're going to be talking about today. So thank you again for being here. And we have with us Amany Shalaby also, who was a translator for our spiritual teacher for 12 years. And our spiritual teacher is Sheikh Muhammad Al-Jamal Rafaya Shaduli, a Sufi sheikh from Jerusalem who was heavily influenced by Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi. Amany has her postdoctorate in the philosophy of comparative religions and did her dissertation on Ibn Arabi. So, among many other things that Amany has done. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Amany.
Yeah, Assalamu alaikum. Welcome, Shu'ayb. It's a pleasure to have you. I have to say, I'm really impressed when I read your work. I'm a native Arabic speaker and I worked as a translator, so I appreciate and understand how difficult it is to translate Ibn Arabi, because after our sheikh passed away, Allah yarhamu, I was thinking, what can I translate now? So I found the Futuhat in Arabic. Of course, it's online. It's like 1,000-page something. And I was like, wow, that's quite a work. So I really want to thank you for the great work you're doing. And, knowing that you're not a native Arabic speaker really posed the question for me of what made you interested, how did you start, and how you must have delved in the language itself very deep and in Sufism very deep. So how really you started all of that, and what made you start it? Can you tell us a little more than just cast it on the path.
Alhamdulillah. Yeah, so the Futuhat al-Makkiyah is one of the two books that are so important in Ibn Arabi's writing is Fusus and the Futuhat. And the Futuhat is about 10,000 pages in the critical edition, and I'm anticipating 19 volumes and 12,000 pages. And this is the first translation and commentary of the Futuhat in 800 years. So there have been some partial translations, and there's been some partial attempts to do a commentary, but somehow the first time that the critical edition was created was 800 years after the Futuhat was written, and it was done by Sidi Mansub in Sana'a, Yemen. And then the first time the translation and commentary has been done in 800 years is right now. So this is a very special time. And as I've been in the last few months, the last half year, been going kind of around the world, from UK and Europe to the Maldives to Indonesia, and what's coming up is that there is a special time that's happening. Ibn Arabi has said that there will be a time, and he already saw it and he already lived it, when it is going to be our time. And he calls this the third part of the night, when our cherisher descends into the sky of this world and is the most close ever, and asks us, is there anyone seeking their separation from me to be healed? Is there anyone asking to be turned to me and I can turn to them? Is there anyone asking of me something that I may bestow them? So this is a very special time. You could say that the time of the midnight is over. The time of the midnight when we don't have any light and we don't know where we're going, and all of the Islamic schools are becoming very fixed and solidified, and then all of the Islamic spiritual paths are becoming very fixed and solidified. That now is the time when our cherisher is coming down. And Ibn Arabi says our cherisher comes down and speaks to us in our own language. And so this is a very special time. And Ibn Arabi says it's our time. And so this is what I see happening with the Futuhat. And so that's why it hasn't been translated for 800 years. And the partial translations, they are word by word. And word by word doesn't work. I was very disciplined all the way up to maybe only a few years ago. I spent 8 years completely disciplined, that word by word everything is so carefully done. No dots in my translation. I always stayed with it. Sometimes for months I would have to sit before the passage for 3 months before something came. And so I stayed with it, kept the discipline, and then at some time what happened is that I found that I was translating very fluidly, and this was something that happened, an event that happened with me with a friend, and so after that event, things moved very smoothly in this translation, and I could pause, wait until I received what needed to be received. And one of the examples I thought I translated something, and then a few years later, I had the actual experience of that chapter. And when I had the experience of that chapter, I said, well, I better go back and see what I translated, what it looks like. And I'm sure I'm going to have to do lots of revisions. And it turns out I didn't have any revisions at all. So even though I didn't know anything about that alighting place, the translation was correct. And then I just was talking of a good friend who, in his dissertation, he writes that he translates something that Ibn Arabi says in the Futuhat one way, and he says, and Dr. Winkel translated this way, which is wrong. And so I called, and so he wanted to go over it with me, so we went over it with it. And then he says, and I said, well, can we go to that section where you say that was wrong? Tell me why it's wrong. And he went there and he said, oh no, you were right. And I said, great, now you published that I'm wrong, and now you say I'm right. What's the good? And so, so this is something that's very exciting. So it tells me that Ibn Arabi wants this work to come, and the peers and the great beings are all doing dua that this work will come out. And so it's clearly beyond my abilities. I don't have any such ability. I'm a reasonably intelligent person. I'm a pretty intelligent person, and I'm pretty good at language. But that's it. I'm not this intelligent. I'm not this good at language. And so therefore, this is something that has to be coming out. So it's a sacred trust. And I just had a wonderful letter from someone who's saying that this is for other generations. This is for what's coming next. And so it's why I'm doing this right now. If I were in a university, you publish 300 pages every couple of years. I've got to do 300 pages every couple of weeks. I mean, that's the speed that we have to go at here. So things are moving very, very quickly, and it's been an absolutely exciting journey because, and I think and one of the things that came up to me kind of recently is we were going over a passage with some people, and they asked, so what's that passage in English? What's the passage back in Arabic? What's the source of that word? What key word is that? And I realized at that point I had no idea, because once it came in English in this way, it's as someone had told me. Someone had said, this is the way Ibn Arabi sounds in English. So when it comes out that way, with that clarity that this is how he sounds in English, then I can't go from the English back to the Arabic, because it's already come out the way it's supposed to come out. So that's also why it's a translation and commentary, or elucidation. A sharh is something that elucidates and gives light to. So this is the first time that's ever been done. And so inshallah, I'll be given the years to be able to complete this. And it really is, this is something that will be completed in more years are required. But I won't do the last paragraph until I'm ready to die, because at that point it'll be, okay, that's off you go.
Well, I really love the way you described it. It's the message and the opening for this era. It's the light is coming, because most of the people see the darkness, but the people on the path see it as the opening of the light.
Yes. Yeah, this is a very special time, and I've been very excited to hear spiritual very, very beings who are telling me that they have been talking about that this is what's coming right now. This is a special time. I remember just a few years ago when one kind of political science kind of scholar was talking about COVID, and he said all his life he'd wanted to see some really big event happen that would change the world. And he said, and now I saw it, and I thought, this is, if you've ever wanted to see that the world will change, this is the time to be in right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think that one of these futuhat is the instructions that we need as we enter this new world.
Mm-hmm.
Ah, beautiful. So just I want to come back to that, the instructions, instructions that we need as we enter into this new world, and the this being for the future generations, right? For the next generation. Just real quick though, you're in your translation on like book 6 and 7 right now, and
right.
There's a total of 37. Am I getting the scope of this thing right?
Yeah. So we're doing 2 books in 1 volume. So that's the easy way to remember it. So right now we have 4 volumes out, and we're hoping that the next 4 volumes are ready for printing in spring, inshallah. So we're now moving very fast. And Sheikh Afaria was asking, why are we moving so fast? And it's because I think I'm going to die. No, it's now. We need this out here. And so it could be going very, very quickly now. There was a lot of gestation going on, of course, and so and me having to learn how to do this and how to be effective in transmitting what needs to be transmitted and understanding what needs to be understood. So it's and the biggest, I would have to say, the biggest way, the most helpful way that ever has come to me to understand has been the community. So from the beginning, Sheikh Afaria tells us that the authority is in a community. And for me, I've seen that when I can't understand Ibn Arabi on my own, and when I just speak to a wall or to a recording, a microphone, nothing comes out. But when I'm speaking to a community who knows and loves Ibn Arabi, then everything comes out. And so I understand things, I am able to describe things, illustrate things, And so that's because of the communities around the world who love Ibn Arabi, who know that this is something important, and who are waiting for their own. This is Ibn Arabi, the Futuhat, 10,000 pages. It's the most articulate description of what's happening to us inside. It's articulate, and it's intelligent, and it is wise, and it is the way to describe what's happening inside to us. I mean, other people can talk about poetry, and he has 70,000 lines of poetry, so he's definitely a poet. But he's also a poet who is also articulate in prose, telling us what's happening to us inside, who we are, where we're going, what we need.
So therein lies.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, therein lies the question: what is happening to us inside?
Yeah, I was about to ask the same.
Okay. So what happens inside is the first is the Futuhat shows us how to read Quran, and then as we're reading Quran, we're beginning to see the scope of what humanity is, and so my teacher talks about the divine origins of humanity. And Ibn Arabi has one line that I just love this line. He says that the who is the inaccessible Zat, the essence, the Zat, the inaccessible, unseen, the place everything comes from, but is completely inaccessible and untouchable by us. And so that's the who. And so when the who becomes manifest, she is humanity. So we are then in a shadow play. We're the curtain. So we're the curtain that allows this shadow play to take place. The humanity is the place where the divine names can play and act and do what they need to do. So if you think about the unseen and then the seen, and the two oceans never meet and they can't cross over. So there's nothing of the seen inside the unseen. There's nothing of the unseen inside the seen. There's nothing of the Zat inside the humanity. There's nothing of humanity inside the Zat. And there's a membrane in between. And this membrane in between is the place where the divine names live. And they look towards the Zat, and they look towards us. So we are old in the sense that we come from there, which is old and eternal. We are new because we are a creation that's never been seen before. So this old and newness is the special feature of humanity. And it's why we're here. It's because the old wants to see the new. And so the old wants to see us. And then what we're doing on the shadow play in this curtain, whatever we're doing is actually what we're supposed to be doing. We keep thinking that I want to make the earth like a paradise. I want things to be nicer, people to be more pious. We think all of those things. But the purpose of this play is for the playwright, the one who wrote the play. And the one who wrote the play is very happy with the way the play is going. So the actors might be complaining, say, I don't want to be the bad guy all the time, or I want to be more powerful. So we might complain about things, but that's because we think it's our play. But it's not. It's the play of the one who created us. And the one who created us so that the divine names would have their place and their position and their agency to do things. And that's why they're there. And that's why we're here.
Beautiful.
That's
So
beautiful indeed.
Is it accurate to say that we are like the shadow that is cast through the membrane from the light through the membrane? We are the shadow.
Yeah. So when we think about a shadow play or a movie theater, there's a light projection, and then it hits the curtain, and then the shadows are us in two dimensions. And so we're running around, and we're not sure why we're there, and we don't realize that we're actually on one curtain, and that curtain is actually called humanity, or it's called Mother Earth, because Mother Earth is humanity. And so Ibn Arabi says, scratch your skin, smell it. Now you know that you're Mother Earth. So you are Mother Earth. Humanity is Mother Earth, and it's the perfect curtain screen for the shadow play to exist. So if you up the dimensions, then we're saying that instead of being so in the shadow play, it hits a three-dimensional puppet which has color and volume, depth, and all of that, and then it casts it onto a two-dimensional surface and makes a shadow. So if the puppet is four-dimensional, then what will be cast to the three-dimensional will be colorful and volumeful. And it will be us. It'll be exactly the way I look right now. This is a three-dimensional shadow of what happens when my four-dimensional self is hit by light. And what's the other dimension? The other dimension is meaning. So when a colorful puppet which has volume and depth gets cast as a shadow, that puppet loses her color and loses the volume. And so what happens when my true self gets hit by light and casts this three-dimensional shadow that you see? What happens is that meaning gets lost. You don't know what I mean. What is the meaning? So when the widow gives the mite for charity, what the meaning of that little charity is greater than when the millionaire gives a little bit of his money. When I say a kind word to someone, that's sadaqah, that's a charity. That charity might be the most valuable thing that person heard that year or that day, that cheered them up and made them feel good. So the value of that, the meaning of that, is only accessible in that other place. And the actual sound waves are just the sound waves. So what they mean is what the meaning gets lost.
Mm-hmm. Would you say then that when that shadow is casted, that the shadow itself, in the beginning, it is losing a sense of the value that is unseen, or the meaning that is unseen, but across the way it is designed is to awaken the shadow to know itself, and then to know where it came from and its divine origin.
That's right. Yeah, and it's so, of course, just a few weeks ago, we were in Indonesia, and we're using the wayang kulit, the shadow play, which is a very powerful part of Indonesian culture and religion. And so when I could say all these things, everyone's, they really understand it because they know the shadow play. So I was saying that when you're a shadow cast on the curtain, you're telling the shadow, can you look at yourself? And where's yourself? It's not on the curtain anymore. It's not on the curtain. It's not. You can go as far as you want, left, right, up, down, but you can't get to the puppet and you can't get to the light. So how do you say, look at the puppet, who you are? Look at where the light is coming from. And you say, how can I look? And so in three dimensions, I say, I look up, I look down, I look left, I look right, I look in, and I look out. And I still can't find who I am, and I still can't find where the light is coming from. So then, but if you imagine back on that curtain with the shadow, and you say, look over there in this strange place, and you can just feel, if they get pulled off the curtain, they'll go, like that. They'll say, what happened to me? Where am I? I see things, and then back onto the curtain. So that's what our dreams are. Our dreams are being pulled off the curtain, taken somewhere where we see things, and then slammed back into the curtain, and we wake up. So the same way in this three dimension, where do I look? I look maybe deep within. I have to find these words to say, find out where I come from and where the light is coming from. And that will find out who I am. So the great ones, the great beings, they see their puppet and they see everyone else's puppets. And so they see the people's value. And then animals do the same thing. So animals probably have four dimensions. They have a beak that can see magnetic fields. Cats know who's who, right? So Ibn Arabi and Sufis of Andalusia said, there's this cat, and he knows who the person is and what they've done. And they either approach them or they stay away from them. So cats are, in a sense, saying that they see who you are as your puppet, and they know what you've done and so on. And Ibn Arabi says that the Hakim, the person who's a wise doctor, knows more about you than you know about yourself, because the wise doctor can see who you are and see that, something's happening to you in your lifestyle that's not good for you. And you'll say, yeah, I'm doing this and it's not good for me. And then they know something that you don't know. And so this is the spiritual guide is the one who can see who your true self is and how can you get to that true self.
Beautiful.
But
So
how can you explain? Okay, we have a lot of
real
questions.
quick. It makes sense that when you talk about the meaning being the fourth dimension, that we are wired to seek meaning. Our hearts have that inspiration and that desire to seek meaning to know our true selves, and that desire for, or the acquisition of meaning is what's going to help us to understand what is on the other side of the curtain. So that just like totally came into
Yeah. Well, and for me, I was very happy to kind of think about. I said, well, how can meaning be the fourth dimension? You have length, you have width, you have all these things. What about meaning?
Time.
And it sounds like strange,
right?
But what we say, and time didn't work, so I said it's got to be something else, and it's meaning. And then I thought, well, how do we describe meaning? We say someone's deep, or that has a lot of depth. So we do talk about another dimension, a depth that's more than the depth of just going into my chest. There's something deep within. So if I say deep within, and that was a deep thought, and that was that person has a lot of depth in them, then I'm really talking about this other place that's orthogonal to every other dimension that I'm familiar with. And we talk about people being oceans. That tells us that there's some vast place that's not just left, right, north, south, and all of that.
Right. As we talk about the ocean of sound, which is one of the things we're going to talk about as well. But Amany.
Yeah, I just want to touch on something for everyone to understand, because it seems like a paradox a little bit that the shadow, or the us, we see that we're struggling, we don't understand, we make mistakes, or this and this. But on the other hand, you said the creator see it as perfect. So what causes us then to feel that it is imperfect in a way? Is it because we make false meaning? Or is it because we don't understand the divine qualities, so we miss kind of use our freedom maybe and do this kind of actions that we call mistakes?
Yeah. Well, see, I mean, Ibn Arabi looks at this and some very intricate passages, and some of them are saying, do the people who are these mystics, or these great ones who recognize Allah everywhere, do they make mistakes? Do they sin? Do they offend? And he says, yes, they do. And what's so torturous for them is that they know they're meant to offend, and they see themselves offending. And so this is a very powerful and painful thing. The others who do these offensive things, they are actually, we call them sometimes kafir. The ones who are covered up. So Ibn Arabi says that those who are covered up, they are told that there's a hellfire and that you'll be punished eternally in that hellfire. And he said this is actually covering up, because the truth of the matter is that each family will be in the garden or the hellfire, and it will be their greatest mercy, greatest joy to be in their place with their family. And he says, but we cover this up because some people will then think that they don't need to reckon with themselves, they don't need to try harder, they don't need to work with themselves, and so on. So he says, so there's a mercy to cover things up. But the other is that, well, I noticed that sort of in mainstream Islam, on the Friday prayer, there's a sermon, and often I just classify this sermon as kind of the shouting at me. They're saying things very loud, and they say do better, and you're not good enough, and all of these things. And then I remember that Effendi, Muzaffar Effendi, so he was asked why he doesn't do that, and he said, well, I accept people for where they are. And Ibn Arabi says the great ones, they know that everyone is exactly where they are supposed to be, and I accept them for where they are. And Ibn Arabi talks about this person who was a very treacherous human being, and the people of the time didn't know whether they should pray behind him or not. And so, because he was such a horrible person. So Ibn Arabi says, well, actually, there's not an issue. What happened with him before, we don't know. So what brought him to where he is now, to be so treacherous, to be a horrible person, we don't know what happened. So we don't know what happened before. And what Allah will do with him tomorrow, we don't know either. So all we know is right now. And at the moment, this person was doing all of the checklist of what it takes to be the imam of the Friday prayer. And so you follow him. They said there's really no question. And so this is the we are of the moment. People are not determined by what they did, and we don't know what's going to happen to them. We are moment by moment by moment. So we're all where we're supposed to be. And so if I think of myself in progression, then I'm looking too much at the past and the future and I'm not looking at the present. So I might actually say, why should I try to get better? I've been so bad before, or maybe I'll be better tomorrow, but I'm not good now. So we've got to leave that kind of thinking and see that with what I have been given, this is the best that I can do. Mm-hmm. And so this is the best that I can do. This is where I am right now. Tomorrow I may be in another place, and I'll take on another challenge tomorrow. But right now, this is what I can do now.
So a great paradox to me seems that, just the whole idea of I doing and being and striving versus what's on the other side of the curtain and me being the shadow. And it's like, okay, so I don't want to say, well, it's the shadow, not me, or it is not the shadow. I am the shadow, and it is the one casting the shadow, not me. And therefore, what more that can I do other than follow that desire for meaning and for purpose and for, we are also wired to want to be of use and to be helpful and to be, well, I guess each is cast as they're intended to be cast, right? Not all wired the same. So I don't even know what the question is there, but it's just,
does it have to do with the intentions and the alignment, like the purpose of why I'm doing? Even if I'm offending or appearing as offending, it's my intention is pure, or it's more in tune with I am more aware it's a divine will. Something like that.
Maybe is the thing, because how much of it is me striving or me wanting to do versus me recognizing that I am a shadow cast.
Right. Yeah. So Ibn Arabi is saying you've already that is the answer. There's one thing called Sharia, the way to the water, and the Sharia depends on an actor, an I. So me, I. Then there's Sharia. And then there's haqiqah, which is the way things truly are, and that's when the I is out of the equation. And so, so if I am in a situation where I have agency and I'm an actor and I see myself and I see I and me, then I have a way to the water. I have a way to act. And I do this, and I do that. I do these prayers. I fast this way. I do this in contracts with other people. All of those things take place because I'm an actor. But then the Quranic verse is, you did not throw when you threw, but Allah threw. So that shows us how everything we do, we ask the question, I did not throw. Yes, I ultimately have no ego. I have no I. I am not someone who does. There's only one who does. And the one who does, does. And the rest of us are slaves. And we do what we're told to do or what we're made to do. And then when you threw, now that I do have agency, when you threw, it means I have agency, that I do something and I am someone and I am accountable and responsible for my behavior. But Allah threw. And ultimately back to haqiqah, the truth. This is the true way things are. So this is the way Ibn Arabi counsels us to deal with what's happening to us. If we have agency, if we're aware of what we're doing, then we're I and me, then we have a Sharia. We have a way. We follow the way of the Prophet ﷺ. We follow, this is how you do things. This is how you make contracts with other people. This is how you behave with other people. This is how you behave with your parents and your children and all of these things. All of that is there when I'm an actor. Then what's interesting is when the I gets destroyed or the ego goes, and that happens in intoxication, it happens in love, and so that's why we call love an intoxication. So when we have love, we lose the ego, and when we lose the ego, we work simply from love, and that Ibn Arabi will say is haqiqah. That is the true way to work from love, and to say that you say Allah, whatever Allah gives me, good, bad, I like it, I don't like it, I don't care. It's the beloved gave me something, it's what I love to do. So whatever the beloved does is loved by the lover. And so when we're in that situation, then we say, I have no movement. And so Ibn Arabi says in that situation, he says, when you tell me to pray, then I ask, and you give me that task, then I ask, but you're the only one who can do things. So who are you asking to do that? Yourself? That sounds strange. Me? I have no ability to do this. I am confused. So he ends and that's exactly it. We go back and forth. It depends. And so Ibn Arabi does talk about that. We say that Allah made me pray. He prayed me. He danced me. So and one of the ways that the Sufis used to say is dancing prohibited or not prohibited. And he says, yes, dancing is prohibited. But if you are made to dance, that's beautiful.
Beautiful. So that's like, on those times when we offend, and I love that you use the word when we offend, we are made to offend. It is that that opportunity for us to find the meaning and come closer to what is on the other side of the membrane.
That's beautiful. Yeah, and only a few years ago, when Shaykh taught us this one, that astaghfirullah, what it means. It's I always thought it as like a sin and things like that. And you say, oh, forgive me my sin. And astaghfirullah, the key word there is GHUFR, which is propolis, which is what the honey, like the bees have propolis, and it protects the honey in the hexagonal cells. And if there's a foreign object, an insect comes in, the propolis will be poured around that object so they won't infect the rest of the hive. So that's propolis, and it means, so it's healing. It's healing things that are not good for me and healing things that have separated me. So astaghfirullah actually means restore me to you. Restore me to you. Heal me so that I can be restored to you. And that's why we say it all the time. And for Ibn Arabi says that when we say astaghfirullah, when we say heal my separation, O Allah, when we say that, an angel is created. And that angel is on our bridge, and what was an offense, which is a separation. So what I did wrong was I felt separated. That's why I did what I did, and I attributed it to myself. And I said, I did this, I was wrong, and that's a gaffe. That's a hook that's right there. And in the journey of my life, that when I'm going from womb to the grave and I'm trying to get to the garden, that hook will grab me and stop me, unless I say astaghfirullah. And the angel, Ibn Arabi says, that angel will be created and will do nothing but wait by that hook till the day of judgment, so that you will pass smoothly across. So that's why we say astaghfirullah. And what it is heal my separation, because I attribute things to myself. I say, I did that. I'm a bad person. I'm horrible. I did that. And that's attributing to myself. And Ibn Arabi says from Quran that those things you attribute to yourself, you can attribute the bad to yourself. That only attribute to Allah is the good. And so to the divine, everything is good. And if I attribute to God, then everything has become perfect in its imperfection. And so, so it's not Ibn Arabi is teaching us not to look at sin as some behavior that needs to be forgiven, but as separation, which needs to be healed. And when I need to be restored to Allah, and restoring is then alignment, turning towards. Then Allah says that I say I give up. I say I cannot fix what I have done, so therefore I say it's not in my control. It's out of my hand. I give up. And then when I give up, I say I attribute everything to Allah. Only you can make things right. And Allah then has that angel, covers the bridge, smooth sailing to the gate of the garden.
So in a way, then I have like a multi-layered question that in a way that it's a healing from the separation, give us either the assurance or in a higher level discovering the beautiful meaning and purpose of what is behind, like the divine purpose and meaning. So that is one way I guess I understand it. And I would like to go back to the concept of hellfire, because I remember reading somewhere that also Ibn Arabi said that hellfire may not be eternal, which is not the popular, traditional Islamic view. But there are few scholars, including Al-Razi, I think, and that argued that it is not eternal. Did you come across something like that?
Oh, it's throughout the Futuhat. Yeah,
throughout the Futuhat. I didn't read the whole Futuhat, but I read something to that extent. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm translating one of the passages right now, and that's the one where Ibn Arabi says that that it can be hidden that of course the people in the hellfire they're her people, they're Jahannam's people, they're her family, and the people of Jannat are her family. And when there's a time when the people of the garden will look at the people in the hellfire and they'll say, thank God I'm not there, because they are in the place that fits them. It's the place that they belong. And the people of the hellfire will look at the garden and say, thank God I'm not there, because they do not want what's there. They want what they have here, the temperature, because the heat or the cold of Jahannam, that's what they want. That's their family. So Ibn Arabi says that when Allah says that my wrath is outstripped, or my mercy will outstrip my wrath. So the outstripping is very good. Let's go quickly to that, and then I hope I don't forget the rest of that. So what happens is that when you have a horse race, and the people will put a stake in the ground, and then they all try to race that with the horses. And Ibn Arabi says, when in this horse race, wrath is very fast, very powerful. It goes so fast towards the stake, and you say, oh, for sure, wrath is going to win. And Rahma is a very slow horse, but she has a very big chest, so she's got all the air, the wind. So in the end, it gets closer and closer, and wrath is getting tighter and tighter, and Rahma is coming up. Rahma then comes to the stake, takes the stake, and Ibn Arabi says the stake is humanity. And he said, I've got you. And there.
Which is mentioned, they alluded to in a hadith that Allah will step the hellfire and it will extinguish itself. And also, I was looking at the vocabulary in the Quran, like I learned it from Ibn Arabi kind of approach to the Quran, where the word khulud, which means eternity, or al-khuld is the mind. So it's like a state of the mind, of consciousness. It's a state of being, and that it is also in the Arabic language, it may not mean eternity. It may.
Well, Ibn Arabi would say that the people, the family of Jahannam will be forever in Jahannam, because that's their mercy, that's the rahmah, and it would be a disservice and an unmerciful thing to take them out of the place where they want to be and they love to be. So there will be a time when Jahannam, the adab, which is torment, becomes udhab, which means sweet water. So adab, so the torment changes to sweet water. It's the same three letters in Arabic. So sweet water and torment are the same three roots. And so Ibn Arabi said there comes a time when the torment changes to sweet water. And then they're there forever, because that is their place. That is the place that is good for them and best for them. And so Ibn Arabi says that, and therefore nothing can take them out of their mercy, because the ghadab, the wrath that was required to put them there and to begin their punishment, and which is their creation of their processing until they can be able to be perfectly peaceful and receive mercy. There's a lot of pain to get there. The faithful people have that pain in this world. People they love die, they get sick, they get hurt, they feel dominated, they feel damaged by people. All of these things happen to them, and that is because that's processing them and making them able to receive the mercy of Allah. And other people cruise through this world, and they get their pains, and people die, and they get sick. They get all of that later, and then they're ready to receive the mercy of God. So this is a necessary process. We get it in this world, they get it in the next world, and so this is a necessary way that all these shadows on this curtain, they all have to be
to pass through it
ways, so they can pass through, and so that becomes a mercy, and so And so there are a lot of ways to express this mercy, but that the wrath that it took will never have that wrath again. So that means that there's no way that the wrath can keep someone in a bad position, but the wrath then gives up, and the mercy outstrips, and then mercy says, now it's changing. And anyone who wasn't their family will be brought into the garden, but anyone who is her family stays there, and this is where they want to be. And they look at the Jannah, they look at the garden, they say, thank God I'm not there.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something about, the torment and the sweet water come from the same root. And I think we find that a lot in the Arabic language, right? Where the root contains the opposite meanings. And ultimately, in my mind, I've reconciled that as because as we come to know the hakikat, the truth, that the opposites are contained and there is no separation. There is only one, right? So, I guess, can we talk a little bit more about that, and perhaps moving into language and sound, and the, I know one of the things that I desire to talk about is emanation of consciousness through the meanings of sounds, and how that kind of decodes our world.
Right. Yeah, so this is why the Arabic language is so important. And so there was at one point I was reading Lisan Arab and Taj al-Urus, and at one point I said, wait a second, everything I'm reading in this, these 3 columns about this one word is straight from the Futuhat. It's exactly the Futuhat. I got all of the Futuhat in the language itself, because all of the tensions and the contradictions. And then I said something, and someone said, oh, someone said that before. But I thought it was very rich. I said, every Arabic word has one meaning, its opposite meaning, a meaning about sex, and a meaning about camels. I thought that was mine. Someone said, no, somebody else has said that.
Right.
Okay, so it definitely is the case. A lot of camels inside there. So, and that is because the words themselves contain all of these meanings, just the way we contain all of these meanings. We contain contradictions, and so and that's one reason why poetry is so effective, and the sound of things. What we're doing in the line by line reading on Fridays, every other Friday, is where you read the text and you hear the text. You hear the text being read, and somehow reading and hearing is enough to get the intellect to kind of fall asleep so that the heart can begin to understand. And so there's something very special about sound, and whenever I have a problem with a sentence, the way to unravel the sentence is I start speaking it, and then I speak it, and then when I speak it and hear it, then I get the rhythm and I understand what's happening. We were reading texts with a good friend in Orlando, and she was saying, this is how I understand the text. And I said, well, my translation was this. And she said, her translation is that. And then she said, let me read it to you. So she read it out loud in Arabic, the way she punctuated it with the voice. And then I realized that was the natural way to say that sentence. So her translation was absolutely the correct one. And that comes from the natural voice. And so Ibn Arabi is actually dictating the Futuhat to his friends. He's writing them down, but he's also saying it out loud. So it's very important to have it out loud. And that's how I can understand things, when it's out loud. And then I began to see the Ibn Arabi saying that I kept thinking everything is so visual, and it is very, very visual. And you say, I see your point, you see. So visual is certainly absolutely important. I mean, we got the illustrated guide to Ibn Arabi, so visuals is important. But you could say that the primary place is sound for Ibn Arabi. And the first thing we hear is be and we are. The first thing we hear is, am I not the one who loves you? Am I not your cherisher? So we hear first. And then the hearing is a cleaving. So our ears are like this, and Ibn Arabi says, and they get cleaved apart. And then something is produced. And so that cleaving, so that has something to do with cleaving. It's same in English. The cleaving is its own opposite, its own antonym. So you can say you cleave together or you cleave apart. So it's its own antonym. It keeps its own, and that's so many Arabic words have its own antonym. It also has to do with sex, and also has to do with camels. So camels also have a cleaving situation. So there you go. So it's always within there. So sound, so the ears get cleaved and they get split, and something happens to them. And then that's the description of how a well is dug. fatir. A fatir is the one who digs the well by putting the blade of the shovel into the sand and splitting it apart and digging and making a well. So Ibn Abbas said, I didn't know what it meant to be fatir of the samawati wal ard, the initiator or whatever of the heavens and earth, until I heard two Bedouins arguing, saying, I'm the fatir of that well because I'm the one who first put the blade of the shovel into that sand. So fatir, and then of course there's a wonderful scholar, and I'm trying to reconnect with her, who says that actually the Arabi words are also Ajami words, are also non-Arabic words. And so when we hear fatir, we do hear father also, father, because there's so many. So it's not that there's Semitic languages are here and Indo-Aryan languages are there. No, actually there could be some very close connections, and one of them might be fatir.
The source is one, and in a way we are the spoken words of Allah. And so the word itself, the sound of the word or the letter have spirit, right?
Yes.
You elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, so we really are one. We have, I mean, I've always been trained in languages. I always say there's separations of languages all the time, and then maybe there's some. It comes from one source, and we are as a human body. We are one humanity, one human body, and we say things one way. So the biggest thing for Ibn Arabi about sound is he tells the story. He says the first letter and the first number is the one which has no second, and the one that has no second is the Aleph, and the Aleph has nothing that comes after her. And so the Aleph is there, and then he connects the Aleph to the Sir Muhammad or to the Nur Muhammad, the light of Muhammad. And so this one is the non-manifest one that is outside of time. But when the Aleph comes into time, it comes in as an Ah sound. And he says the Ah sound, the Hamza, the Ah sound. And he says the Ah sound is very interesting. The Ah is a sigh. It's like Ah. And what happens is that we hear that I am a treasure concealed, and I long to be recognized. So I create the treasure chest, humanity, and I teach them to recognize me, and they recognize me. So this is the sigh. I'm a treasure, and no one sees me, no one appreciates me, no one values me, no one knows I exist. And so that sigh is wet and vaporous, as Ibn Arabi says, and it creates the mist. And the mist is what is where everything takes place. And then in this mist, the first created being is the light of Muhammad. And when that light of Muhammad is created, he turns to where he came from and says, there's no reality but you. And she says, and you are the one who's conveying my reality. He says, La ilaha illallah, and she says, Muhammadur Rasulullah. So this is the Aleph. And then when it comes into being, into the Mother Earth, into humanity, it comes as a Hamza. And so the first is that Sai. And then the next is an H, a Ha sound. And the last is the U sound. So it goes all the way through the body, makes all of the letters. And Ibn Arabi is so interesting here, because everything is Arabi, Arabi, Arabi. But he's not talking about Arabic. He's talking about the Arabi language, which is the Arabi Mubin, the language which makes things clear. Mm-hmm. And so this is not just the standard classical Arabic. And in fact, and he is also he seems to know very little about other religions or other languages. He seems to be very monolingual. And I can understand that for me, translation, I cannot translate anything into French or German or any of the languages that I know, Urdu or any of the languages I know, I can't translate them, only English. So I'm monolingual when it comes to that. So he says that there are 70 phonemes in the human body. And then he talks about tones. So not only are there 70 phonemes, there are tones, which he calls colors. And so now he's talked about human language, not just Arabic language with 28 letters, or other languages have 36 letters or 70 phonemes with their own tones. So he is talking about a universal language. So it comes through the body and is produced by the body. And then when it comes out the lips, it comes out the last letter is U, the wav or the U sound. And so you start with ha, you end with U, hu, hu, hu. So that comes out that way. And then the lips are, the last letter wav is 6. and it's associated with Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if you ask, is there another prophet after Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Your answer is, there's no other place after the sound, after the air has left the body and left the mouth. There's nothing else out there that can change the sound, modulate the sound. So there are no more messengers after the last one has come, which is the Wav, which is the sixth, which is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, and then he's the beginning and the end, and the beginning and the end is Rahman. So when you draw a circle, the moment you put the dot on a page, you now know where the end of the circle is going to be. It's going to be right there. So the moment I draw a circle, I already have told you what the end is. And so first and last. And then if that circle is actually not just a circle like this, but a Mobius circle or loop, then a Mobius circle loop is the beginning all the way around twice to the end. Beginning, inside, outside, end. So who is the first, the last, the inside, and the outside. So when you go through the Mobius strip like this, you're reciting the Quranic verse. Who is the first, the last, the outside, and the inside?
Wow, that is very deep. If I may comment on something you said that struck me about the sigh. I want to go back to it because CD, our shaykh, usually told us it's the first sound that the baby would make when the newly born, when he's just a newly born. And also the word mishkat in Arabic language, which is the niche in the verse of light. The mishkat comes from shakwa. Shakwa means complain or sigh. So is it like whenever we have that sigh inside us, which is unspoken, it's a feeling, that sigh is almost like when the divine wants us to release or to act to channel the divine qualities?
Yeah. So for Ibn Arabi, well, he starts out a little bit easier by saying that every attribute that there is a divine attribute. He says we don't have seeing and hearing; those are divine attributes, and there's nothing that we have. It's all Allah has it, and then we take those attributes. So he starts with that, which is kind of okay to handle, and then he says that every emotion that we have is actually a divine emotion. Mm-hmm. Every experience we have is a divine experience. Every hurt we have is a divine hurt. And this gets very tough to say that the divine gets hurt. And the divine has a wound. And the divine wants something but doesn't have it. So wanting is irada. Irada is desiring. Irada. So this irada is a divine attribute. So when we sigh because we want something we don't have it, this is the sigh of the Zat who sighs and says, I'm a treasure, but no one sees me. No one recognizes me. No one knows me. So I have to create someone who can look at me and say who I am, and can look at me and say, you are everything. You are great. You are beauty itself. That's what has to happen. So it's very difficult, and I don't know how. I mean, it's one of the secrets is that when we have this experience of I'm not seen, I want something and I don't have it. And I wish this would happen. I wish someone would see me. I wish someone would hear me, acknowledge me. That's a divine experience. That's not just my experience.
Mm-hmm. A hidden treasure who desired to be known. And
yes.
Yeah, I just have to tell this story about this little girl that I worked with at one time. She was 6 years old at the time, and she had not forgotten. She remembered still about being in the womb. And she said, when you're in the womb, you get to go back and ask questions, like when you get scared, because you can see everything from there. And when you get scared, you can go back and ask questions. So you still have that ability to travel between the veils. And her mom asked her, well, you got scared? What happened? And she said, well, Mom, they show you a movie of your whole life before you come here. And Mom says, really? And it's scary. And, she says, well, if you don't like it, can you change it? And she says, no, Mom, God has it all worked out. And you have to come here. It's like going to school. You have to go to school because you have to learn things. And she says, well, do you remember the movie? And this is the beautiful part that is reminding me of, I'm reminded of as you talk about the treasure. She says, no, Mom, that would be like going on a treasure hunt when you already know the treasure.
Yeah.
A 6-year-old girl said this, right?
That's amazing.
Yes. And it's, it's like we forget, right? It's like this is the ultimate reality show where we forget. We think we're separate. We think we're independent. We think that we are somehow masters and actors in this single, separate and independent universe when, we're actually like acted in a treasure hunt to know the treasure. And, so
That's so beautiful. Yeah, and it just struck me also that in Quran that the soul is taken out. Allah takes the soul out, and if the body is going to continue to live, brings the soul back. If not, keeps the soul out. And so the soul is always traveling. And newborns they're sleeping all the time. 23 hours, 23 out of 24 hours they're sleeping, and that's such a mercy because they're able to go back and come back and come back, and then they forget. So when they come out, they know everything, and then they forget. And the body, because it's composite, makes forgetting happen. So then we forget, and we spend the rest of our life trying to remember what we forgot. So some remember quickly, some remember takes a long time, some remember only after the grave, that they can then remember why they were created.
So that is why the practice of zikr with sounds comes.
So that's why that's where the hearing comes in. And so because when we're in the womb, we hear perfectly well. The hearing is the reminder. Dhikr is tadhkir, is to remind, and dhikr is a remembrance. And so one of the reasons that they say that the babies, when they're born, they say ba ba ba, is because they said bala in Arabic, and and so all of these are sounds that are coming out, and there's also reminding. So they're remembering by saying that ba 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 ba. They're remembering or reminding themselves that that's the word that they heard, and that they heard themselves say that. That's the contract. That's the covenant, and that's the thing that remember this. And so. Yeah. Because when we come into the body, we forget. And the older we get, the more we forget. And so how do we remember what we had forgotten? And it does require us to go into another place. And we call it deep within or something like that. And the reason, one of the beauties of sound is that things that we see, we have object permanence. We think that things are always there. And so there's object permanence, and so we tend to think that this is a stable world. And sound always remembers that once a sound comes, it's never going to be heard again, but it also will never go outside of existence. Once a sound wave starts, it will never end. And so sound never ends, but it's never encompassed. You cannot encompass a wave. You can't cut it up. So what physicists try to do and what scientists try to do is analytical, try to cut things up to find out what they are. So if you take a wave and you cut it, it's no longer a wave. It doesn't work. It's plop. You take a wave in the ocean, you put two walls on it, you no longer have a wave in the ocean. So a wave is something that it comes from somewhere, it goes from somewhere, and never ends. And then there's a moment where it is, but it cannot be encapsulated or encompassed. And so the wave and the sound, this is one of the beautiful metaphors or images, or we have the word for audibles or something, that where the who is always bringing things into creation. They're there, and then they continue it for eternity in creation. They never leave creation after they've come into creation. So this is what sound does. It teaches us that there's now, because I cannot remember what sound came before, and I cannot predict what the sound will be next, but I only can hear the sound at this moment. And so that's a beautiful teaching, to say that if I want to find out where the sound comes from, I have to hear the sound at this moment. And so this is why every moment, so Sheikh Noor translates Yunus Emre, who translates Ibn Arabi in the Futuhat, saying that every breath is a path to Allah. Every breath is a path to Allah. You don't have to go anywhere, and you don't have to do anything. Every breath goes back to where it came from. And so if you could only ride the breath, one wave, all you need to do is ride the one wave, and you're there. And so when Ibrahim Adham left and said, I'm going to go look for God, he got on his horse, and the saddle turned around and said, this was not why you were created. And then every step that you've taken towards what you think is God has been a step away from me, has been a step away from God. And then Bayezid Bastami, he goes outside of Bistam, goes looking for God. Some old guy comes up to him and says, who are you? He says, I'm Bayezid Bastami. Oh, you're Bayezid. Allah is back there in Bistam looking for you. So we don't take a step forward. We take every breath is a path to Allah. And it's one step. Not a series of steps, not something that takes place in the future, requires something in the past. It's one step. And so sound teaches us that, whereas the visual doesn't necessarily teach us that the same way. But sound teaches us that there is sound right now. What there was before is no longer present. What there's next is going on eternally. And when you get there, you'll see whatever it is there. We cannot predict what the next note will be. So we have maqam, which are like the syntax of sentences, which are like the scales of music. So you know that the next note will be a note. You know, it'll be B flat or A flat, or it'll be a note, but we don't know what note it will be.
Beautiful. So you alluded earlier to the sounds from the the silent aleph to the u. Being a progression through the body, right? Through that. Can you say more about this in terms of like how this can help us to understand, if we can, the emanation of creation from the source? This is one of the things that really intrigues me and fascinates me about the teachings.
Yeah. So Ibn Arabi is going to tell us that each of the places that the air goes through, the air can modulate it. So they get modulate it as a palatal, as a labial, as a dental, as a guttural, and all of these things, it modulates them. And Ibn Arabi then ties those into the light of Muhammad. So these are all the lights, all the guides of humanity. So the first guide, the Aleph, is there outside of time, and then the next one that comes in is going to be all of humanity's guides, and so they all our guides are here. So they have all of them.
All of the sounds that can be produced in the body are guides.
Right, all the sounds are guides, and so all of them can be put together and understood as meaning. So we can understand the meaning. So the meaning is not in the sound or the letter or the word itself. It's in the reading. It's in the voicing. It's in the making audible. That's where meaning comes from. And so all of these beings modulate in certain ways. So when we look at them, we see, the sad is different from the ta, and the ja is different from the ka, and we see separation. And instead of saying, well, inside the ka and the ja and the da and the sa, inside of that is the ah. And so the ah is inside all of them. So this nur, this light, is inside all of them. And you can't say that the seen is better, the S is better than the T is better than the U. It doesn't make any sense. All there is that everyone has an ah inside of it, and everyone is coming through the curtain, the veil, which is humanity. And so to remember that one of the ways to remember that is, and one of the practices is to recite Hu, H-U. Who, because the who is the first one and the last one. And so by reciting who, we are understanding that all of these guides have been touched, have been met, have been thanked and welcomed. And so that this is a word that reminds us of the looping that takes place, that we are one breath away from this light. Because the light came, put into the breath one, and it came out. Breath two, breath three. Any of those breaths are breaths that can be gone back to, and the light is seen. So any of those breaths, you can go back to the puppet in the shadow play, and back to the projector and the light.
So something that Ibn Arabi touched on, and I've been contemplating actually and receiving some of the treasures, is that the sounds exist within us, or they come from us, and they have the meaning, and spirit is alive in them, but that also has a cosmic dimension. So, and Ibn Arabi touches about that a lot, about the orbits of the letters and their meaning in these other cosmic dimensions. Would you, I know it's a very deep, complicated topic, but can you touch a little bit on it?
Yeah, right. So right now in the line by line reading, we're at chapter 2, and chapter 2 is the most difficult chapter there is. I spent years looking for anyone else who says anything about anything like these things that he talks about letters, and no one else comes close to talk about all these things for them. So letters are communities. They're an ummah. They are a community. They have their own guides. They have their own messengers. They have all of these things. They say, where is all this coming from? And there's 2 orbit and 3 orbit and 4 orbits and 10 orbits, and there are all these kinds of orbits and all these things. So I said, how is all this happening? And so then suddenly, during one of the Friday sessions, we were looking at, I think, Surah 100. Yeah, I think Surah 100. And one of the images that's coming up is the horse's mane. So Ibn Arabi is telling us that the horse's mane is a visualization of time, of dual time. So time, we think about numbers as a number line, and then there's a number plane, which is the complex plane, and then there's a number volume, which are octonions and the other strange kind of voluminous numbers. But the same thing happens with time. So time is not just a timeline, it's a time plane. So it has 2 dimensions. It has length and it has width. And Ibn Arabi talks about time as having length and width. And he doesn't, well, somehow I got it that, okay, he's talking about the horse's mane. So the horse's mane goes from the forelock to the haunch, I think. And that's one line. And that's where all the letters come from. And that line is from the inner chest to the lip. So that's like, say, a vertical line. But then he says that all of these letters that come in any of these places have traveled for 3 years. So that took a while to figure out, oh, he means the horse's mane. So the horse's mane comes like this, and then the hairs go like this, sideways. So every letter that comes like this in 1 second has taken 3 years to reach there. So 1 second vertically, 3 years horizontally. So that helps explain a little bit of something, but also tells you why the Sufis are so careful about sounds and words that they say, because they produce angels, for instance. They produce good things, they produce bad things, and they have come for 3 years to come here, so they are valuable. They're all of them very, very valuable. So these sounds are also then beings. So they're the zodiac, but they're also connected to the 12 imams, and so they also have they're sort of spiritual beings who sort of organize and are in charge of the world, of the cosmos. And so they have their 3-year orbits that they do things in, and those 3-year orbits that are dual time. As Muhammad Haj Yusuf uses the word dual time. These are the plane and then the timeline. So whatever's happening here second by second is happening 3 years, 3 years, 3 years. So only Ibn Arabi talks about dual time as far as I can see, and only he's the one who sees what's happening, what the quality of these letters are. It's something I'm still very much exploring, because it will burst my mind to work on time as a plane, as a 2-dimensional thing. Because it's like when you take numbers and all of a sudden you say, what if the number has a width as well? I say, what? And then your brain starts frying. So it's difficult. So the idea that there's a time that has 3 years and 1 second. So 1 second in one direction, 3 years in the other direction. That's just a lot to work with.
Right. And, I love the just exploring the concepts of time. I took a chaplaincy program with Amany, and we read a paper of Ibn Arabi where he talks about time as just like my mind remembers it as like space worms, like just answering the question of if creation is continuing to unfold and evolve, how is it that God is the all-knowing from the beginning to the end, and there is no beginning and there is no end, and talking about like panning out beyond this limited dimension, a dimensional reality that we live in, into a greater dimensions, and seeing time as like these space worms that are traveling through this dimension, where we see a cross section of the time and in this space.
Right. Yeah. Julian Barbour is a physicist who wrote The End of Time in 1999, I think, and I really liked his work. He says it's atemporal, that there's only now, there's only a now, and there's no movement and there's no continuity. And so I emailed him some passages from Ibn Arabi. He wrote back and said, "Wow, that says it much better." So he was but this idea of, well, and then I look at it as, for people of my generation, you have a vinyl record, and that vinyl record contains all, but what's being played is only what you hear at that moment. So that's like sound. So sound is something that has a presence, and it doesn't necessarily know what's happening before or after. And so the difference between the divine names is Al-Alim, the one who knows, and then Al-Khabir, the one who is informed. So in the Quran we hear that we will try you until we are informed, or until we know. And that until we know means that we need to see what happens, and then the divine names will then say this is what happened. So they're with the stylus as it goes around the record player. The alim is the one who knows sees the record player, hears the record player as one big sound. We hear it though, and the divine names hear it as step by step by step. So sound is coming to us in a series of nows, and all we can know is the now at any one moment. And there's no algorithm that predicts what the next sound will be. So we're in that status, and we're like, so the ink that's in the inkwell, all of the letters that are going to be drawn from the inkwell can be known by Allah, but not by us, and not by the divine names. They need to have each letter drawn before that they can see what they have. And the one who draws it is the pen, and the pen is the light of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So that shows that outside of time, all of this is clear. Inside of time, everything is as with a sound on a record. And so, and then sound then has its meaning. So the notes, what things mean, not just the notes. The notes aren't good notes and bad notes. A, B, fa, sa, sol. These are not good or bad. We are the ones who find meaning. The letters themselves, the sounds themselves, are not good or bad. So that means that they're always mutable. So we can go back to the record player, listen to the song again in that place, and hear it differently. So the sound is going to be the same, but what it means is going to be different. So context. Just the way the context, and so it also I can go above and say, can I hear the sound and this time know what it means and change its meaning? And so the way I think about that is that, if someone hits me like this, then you get so angry. I get so angry as you just kill the person, right? And they, oh, sorry, my mistake. The moment they say sorry, my mistake, it does, it still hurts, but it's over. But so that's the difference between this hit is exactly the same hit. Or if a tree, I'm walking through the forest and the tree goes bang like that, and he gets so angry. Wait, it's a tree. It didn't mean to do that. Okay, now it's okay. It still hurts. I might have a red spot there, but. So in other words, the event itself can't change. It's immutable. But the meaning is completely mutable. The meaning is completely changed. Either I can go and say that tree, was hit me for a good reason, reminded me of something. I was forgetting something. The tree reminded me. What a lovely tree. Thank you, tree, for doing that. Or someone says, oh, it was an accident. I think, okay, it's an accident. That happens. I'll forgive you the way you forgive me. So all of these things are absolutely mutable. Our events are unchanged. The events are going to be there. As the 6-year-old said, there's a movie, and these are all the events that are going to happen. But what it means is entirely up to me and you, and I can then change it at any time. So that means that even if someone is in the grave, they have a bridge from the womb to their grave. And I can say, when I hit you like that, I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry. Would you forgive me? And if that person forgives me, then my bridge is opened up. And then their bridge is opened up. And if I say to the person who's just died, I say, we had this argument, I leave it at that. Or you owed me money, it's done. And so that clears that person's bridge. Now that person's bridge has changed, even though that person's in the grave. So there's never too late to change meaning. And that meaning then is the bridge. The bridge of your life from womb to the grave is your meaning. And there's never too late to change the meaning. And it's always changing. It's always changing because someone that I don't even remember is forgiving me for something that I did. And I even forgot. So my bridge is changing. I don't even know someone's changing my bridge at this moment. So alhamdulillah, that's why we always are forgiving each other, and we're always restoring each other and saying, I forgive you, and I will reinterpret this event. And so Nelson Mandela, I remember he was saying that, did you forgive the guards, and did you forgive the people who put you in prison? And he said, if I didn't forgive them, I'd still be in that prison. Mm-hmm. So the prison is an event that's just going to happen, but the event can be, the meaning is changing. He can say, I don't want to be in that prison anymore. I forgive. I'm out of here. Yeah. And so
the power of forgiveness to open the bridge.
And this is something that's very delicate because everyone has to come to it for themselves. And no one can say, oh, you ought to forgive that. There are horrible things that happen, and horrible things have happened to people, and to say that you should just forgive them, nothing like that at all. But when that person says, I don't want to be that way anymore, I want to say the event happened, but this is my interpretation, this is my meaning, that's the liberating. That's so very, very liberating. And one hopes that we all can come to that and take things that someone failed me, but I forgive and I move on. And then that helps them, and it helps me, and that our bridge then gets smooth as we go to the gate of the garden.
Yeah, beautiful. We're good in time because you still have time, or?
Yes, inshallah, yes.
Yeah. So I'm really drawn to the sound me and the Mastura. So I'm going to go back to it a little bit because what I was reading Ibn Arabi, and it seems like very ambiguous, of course, in the beginning, but I'm receiving a little bit of glimpses. And what caught my attention is that there is the elementary particles, that they are the ferminos, and anyway, they are 28, and we have the Arabic letters 28. And these particles, which they are wave in nature, but they are also particles, and they are stardust. And you see Ibn Arabi talking about the connection of the letters to the zodiac signs and to the planets. And in a way that these sounds inside us resonate also with the universe around us, and with the planets, and the way the Arabs, the ancient people, not only the Arabs, I have to say, they were always looking at the zodiac signs and reading how it will affect the earth and all of that. I think Ibn Arabi touches on that a little bit. Have you kind of cracked his code a little bit of it?
Yeah. No, when I was a lot of times to try to understand Ibn Arabi, I've had to delve in and dive into places, and it does seem that there's sort of there's Chinese, Indian, Arabic, and so the way they handle cosmologies and mathematics, very enlightening. And so Ibn Arabi talks about some kinds of mathematics that only the Indians seem to have understood, so Bhaskara and some of the others. And so there's something there, and it is a fascinating world. And so that's, again, that these events are there, that humanity is moving through, because humanity is this cosmos, and we are moving through things, and things are happening to us. And so to understand how things are happening when the moon is here and the sun is there, and the asteroids are here and the comments are there, and all of these things are they're all signs because they're all events, and how we interpret them. We're trying to find out where things are going. Where is this cosmos in its age, and how is it functioning? Where am I in this age, and how is my body functioning? So these are all of these things, and then things that happen out there happen inside here, and then also I have influence from inside to the outside. We have things that get placed and set in another world, or in the barzakh, in this membrane world, and then they come into here, either dreams first and then into what we call reality, or it gets put together. Ibn Arabi's greatest teacher was Shu'ayb and they met only in the barzakh, and so he would learn and then come back and say what he had understood. So and then this becomes the vast earth. So the vast earth, the Ard al-Wasya, is this vast earth, which is the true earth. And in his diagrams, when he looks at the cosmos, he has a diagram with the all body, then a blank circle, and then he has a throne, and then the kursi, which are the 2 feet that come down on the footstool. And that one that's not labeled is the earth, it's vast earth, because Mother Earth is inside the cosmos and outside as well. So this is the only thing that's inside and outside. So it is the membrane. And so it is humanity, because we are old and we are new. So we're old and uncreated, and we are new and created. And so we are the ones that hold that in ourselves, in our humanity. And so, and then the first sound we hear, the last sounds we hear. So the first sound we hear is, "Am I not your cherisher?" And so to hear that sound, we have to have the divine attribute of being able to hear. And then to say, "Yes, you are my cherisher, you're the one who loves me," we have to have the divine attribute of speaking. So Sheikh Noor says, if we didn't already know the truth, we could not learn the truth. If we were not already the truth, we could not know the truth. So we have to already have the divine attributes of hearing, seeing, desiring, knowing, living, speaking. We have to already have those divine attributes, otherwise nothing could happen. If we were not alive and Allah spoke to a lump of clay that's not alive, nothing would happen. If the lump of clay had no ears to hear, it could not hear, then Allah could speak as much as Allah wanted to speak and nothing would be heard. So the divine attributes are already in us. That's the secret. That's the secret, that unless we were already divine, we could not become who we are. We could not become humanity unless we were already divine. Mm-hmm. So that's the divine origin of humanity. So the first thing we hear is, am I not the one who loves you? And we say, "Yes, you are." And then the last thing we hear in this world, and then we're sent to this world. And when we're sent to this world, we forget. And the last thing we hear is that if we are fortunate, someone will give us an inception, a talqeen, and they'll lodge something in our chest, and they'll say, "You're going to go to the grave." And when you go to the grave, 2 people will come to you and they'll ask you questions. And so here's how you answer. So the first thing we hear is outside of time. We enter into time and accomplish it. We enter into the womb when the clay has been lumped together for 4 months, and then we enter into that lump of clay. We're in the womb. The womb becomes tighter and tighter. There's too much pressure, and we have to go. Something has to go. We can't just sustain ourselves and stay here forever. And so a channel opens up, and that channel opens up. There's light on the other side, and we move through the channel, and we come out, and we come into this world. And then when we're in this world, we hear one more time that what's lodged inside your chest. And so when I say, "I am a treasure concealed," Ibn Arabi says a treasure concealed means that there's a treasure chest. So where's the treasure chest? Open the treasure chest and see what the treasure is. So we open this treasure chest, we see what the treasure is. And then if we're about to die, if we're fortunate, someone reminds us and says, "When you go to the grave, you'll hear this." So we hear in our ears. The first thing we hear is, "Am I not the one who loves you?" And the last thing we hear when we're in this world is, "When you get to the grave, do this and do that. Say this, say that." And so this is the procedure of going into time. And then once we're into time, we stay in time forever, eternally. But there's a timeless ocean and an endless ocean. And in the middle is the humanity. So this timeless ocean, endless ocean. And so these oceans don't mix, they have the membrane inside. And so Ibn Arabi says what's strangest and most wondrous is that there's never been a time when I have not been outside of time. So this is what we want to be, is be able to go outside of time. Like your 6-year-old person who said that you can ask questions. So you can go and ask and go outside of time again. And so Ibn Arabi said there's never been a time when I've not been outside of time. And so now that's to be lifted up and see the record player and then watch the stylus go around. It's the record to go around, the stylus to play music. And it's also the shadow play. To be outside of time is to move off the curtain and go to the light and go to the projector and see the whole thing through someone else's eyes. So the one who's seeing the play, you see it through those eyes. And suddenly everything becomes clear. And you see things that you couldn't see if you're on a curtain. So that's why the Prophet ﷺ had 360 view. And Ibn Arabi had that one moment in his life when he could see around him at 360 degrees. It's because he was not looking from shadow to shadow. He was looking from projector to shadow. So,
beautiful. Beautiful. So many questions. But if I may ask a question about nature, animals, plants, water, all of the elements of nature, everything has a life, right? Ibn Arabi said everything is alive, even the things that you think are not. Everything has a life. Everything has a consciousness. Do they? I know we're the ones that forget. They do not. Is that correct?
yes.
Did you understand it?
Yes. So everything is alive, articulate, and intelligent, because it has to be alive to be able to do the celebration of the divine. It has to be articulate so that the celebration is articulate. It has to be intelligent to know what it's celebrating. So everything is alive, intelligent, and articulate. And Ibn Arabi says so what we really shouldn't say is that someone died or someone passed away. Someone says someone's spirit went somewhere else, and their mineral continues to be alive. So this mineral body will always be alive, and that's because it's Mother Earth. And so this is one humanity, and once we enter existence, we'll never leave. We'll always be mineral. And that mineral is the most receptive of the divine radiance. So the divine radiance comes out, it's like looking at the mirror, and then the mirror makes an image, and we see an image behind the mirror. And what is the best mirror, the most receptive mirror, is humanity, is Mother Earth. And so because we receive all of the different views or perspectives of the divine as the divine gazes at the mirror. So we're able to show all of those different views, different looks, different aspects, because we were taught the divine names, all of them. So because we were taught the divine names, all of them, every divine feature has an expression in humanity. And so this is what makes humanity special, because that humanity can demonstrate the features of the divine. And so demonstrating the features of design is why we're here. And so then if we see that we are demonstrating the features of the divine, then we begin to take on another viewpoint. And when we take on the divine viewpoint, we see everything in a very different way, in a very beautiful way. And the easiest way to understand it is love. And that is that whatever the beloved loves is loved by the lover. So whatever Allah loves to see is loved by me to see, whether I think it's good or bad. It's what Allah loves to see it, then I love to see it.
Last question is when you talked about the membrane, and according to Ibn Arabi, as far as I understand, it's also the imagination. So in a way, it's the threshold between the two worlds, and through it we also hear, or we even our own thinking, it's words. It comes in words. So there is this aspect of the word spoken and the word also that is inside. So the words are inside are also vibrations or sound. I think Ibn Arabi touches on that a little bit.
Right. Yeah. So the difference, so the imaginal, this membrane, so the membrane, it draws upon the senses. So that's how the senses are so important, because the raw material of the imagination and memory and all of that comes from the senses, the five senses. So the senses are the raw material, and they give the data. And then the data comes into, so if the imagination sees a unicorn, well, it's an ibex and a horse, and so because I have to have seen an ibex, I have to have seen a horse. So one of the things that in order to have this rich imaginal realm, I need to have the senses. And so the senses are what provide all of these things. I need to hear all of these sounds in order to be able to imagine sounds. And I need to be able to form these words that have never been formed before, but they have a basis that they come from. So we're looking for the basis that things come from. And then the imagination is the place where all of these things can come together and do things that are then they have an aspect of the divine, because they're creating things that have never been made before. So they come from something, but they're created and they haven't come before. But then Ibn Arabi, when he's talking about imagination, I'm still working on this. We had a talk with Ibn Arabi Society, and one of the guests was asking about imagination, and so it's something I'm studying more now, because what I'm finding very important is Ibn Arabi's look at the senses. And he says the senses are primary. And so Allah can be the entity of the senses, but never of the secondary things like imagination, the imaginal, the memories, things like that, because they depend on something else. Allah will not depend on something that depends on something. So when Allah says, I become the hand with which they hold and I become the ear with which they hear, that shows that the senses and the entity are the same. And so the senses, that's where the senses are. So then Ibn Arabi says, so you should find out for yourself, which of the senses are you? Which of Allah's senses are you? Are you the hearing? Are you the seeing? Are you something else? And then he says, and I've already told you what sense I am. And I have a few answers to what he means by that, but it's a little bit of a riddle. What sense is Ibn Arabi? So that's something to do. We think about sound. So the sound that I become the hearing with which someone hears. The sound itself, the sound is exactly what it is. It is everything that it is. It can't be better or worse. It is sound. It is the way it is. And what we're then saying, it is then divine, because it can't be better and it can't be less. It can only be what it is. And what it is, so when Allah speaks, what does it sound like? We know. That's there is Allah's speech is no different from the speech you're hearing right now. And so it's not Allah has a very melodious voice. No, he has whatever voice that you hear, that's the voice that Allah uses. So Ibn Arabi likes to use the verse from the Quran that give the person asylum so that he'll hear the word of God. And Ibn Arabi said the word of God is being spoken by the Prophet, who is a human being, but it's the word of God. So when you want to ask what is beautiful in creation that is divine, we have the answer. And what is Allah's sound? We have the answer. What is feeling, which is divine, feel like? We have the answer. Mm-hmm. And it's only, and those human beings who want to be transcendent are the ones that they want to belittle the sounds, the voices, the features, the humanity, the people. And they want to transcend that and say, I don't want this body. I want to transcend bodies. And I don't want to be a friend of this person. I want to be a friend of God. Well, if you want to be a friend of Allah, you have to be a friend of this person. And if you can't see that this person is perfect in their imperfection, then you can't see Allah. And if you can't hear that the sound that I just heard is the way Allah speaks, then I've missed it.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So if I may ask another question, or just touch back into what you said, about the horse's mane. the horse's mane, and we have the 28 letters of the Arabic alphabet, which really do, their placement, like as they move through the body, that place of friction within the body actually does make an arc, right? That I believe Ibn Arabi relates them to like the stages of the emanation of creation from source, right? And they do move along the vocal tract from behind the heart, step by step by step, up through the mouth and out through the lips, from the ha to the woo and to the wow. And my visual mind is relating that to the horse's mane, the 1 second of sound, and the 3 years that it took to, on the other plane, if you will,
Right.
the width of the sound. And I'm just wondering, as a way to really explore and understand the creation and the emanation of creation from its source, to like really dive into that 1 second of sound, or 1 second of that sound, and just be with it, to like, can we feel into the 3 years and the 3 years of knowledge, wisdom, experience, whatever that is associated with that 1 second of sound. I'm intrigued by that, and I want to go spend 3 years.
Yeah.
I want to go spend time in each sound and feel into the other dimensions of time, and see what can I experience from there just by being with an individual sound.
Right.
But if I may add to that a little bit, that when we notice also how the newly born is taught to speak, Allah teaches us to say all the names. So he taught him to speak, and almost at 3 years, you found that all the sounds are coming together and forming the words correctly and so forth. So that's kind of parallel to the horse mane.
How long it takes. Yeah. But now if you think about what I was describing in Indonesia to the people very close to the shadow plate, that what it feels like for the shadow to go towards the puppet in the light, and it's like a feeling. So you've been disassociated, you've been disengaged, you've been somehow pulled out. The same way will happen when you start exploring the sounds. When you start exploring the sounds, and then you feel the width of 3 years, you go, you'll feel this. You've entered into, it's like a river going into the ocean. Instead of staying that way, all of a sudden it starts spreading out oceanically. And so you'll feel, what does that mean? And so this is going to be the ocean of time instead of the river of time. And when you enter the ocean of time, what will happen? Well, for sure, things will dilate. There'll be a slowness of time. And we know that we have that experience of time dilation. And there'll be dream within a dream, time within time. And so there'll be a moment when we are doing things in the 3-year place. So Ibn Arabi talks about the Jahari. He went to the ocean and went to the Nile River, and he was washing. And when he went inside the river, he all of a sudden he saw himself. He was in Baghdad, and he was married, and he had 3 kids. And so he comes out of the water, goes home, tells his family what he saw, and then a few months later, someone says, "I'm from Baghdad, and these are his 3 kids, and we were married in Baghdad, and these are his 3 kids." So things can happen in there, and in sort of the horse's mane time, he was in the water for a few seconds, but in this time, he was in Baghdad, marrying and having 3 kids, and so we can enter that and feel that this. My experience is the river going into the ocean. It just spreads out. The delta just spreads out in there. It also happens with brain waves that that from the populous house, 70,000 angels are coming every day. So 70,000 divided by 86,500 whatever seconds makes 1.1 second is the hertz, is the frequency of these angels coming to us. They can come to us faster or slower, but they about one every second. And so we can have a situation when if our brains are in theta wave, like at 1.1 hertz, and then one angel. And that's when time dilates, and it's usually when we're in prayer or other kinds of experiences like that all of a sudden time will then widen. And then when it widens, more than we're having experiences or having angels come to us that we are responding to, and it may have only been a few minutes that we've been doing that, but somehow we've had all of these experiences. And the same way with dreams, that someone, Ibn Arabi says there's a place where you dream for 1 hour and you have 3 days of experience. So the person has been sleeping for 1 hour, but they've had 3 days of experience happening. And so these are, that's from the movie Inception too. They have the dream within the dream, but that's definitely from Ibn Arabi. It's a beautiful idea that we can have these experiences that come from us from outside of time, and then from this vast earth. And so it looks the same. It looks like, oh, he's just sleeping, but in the vast earth, actually, I've been traveling for 3 days.
Yeah, beautiful.
Fascinating.
I will say I've had those conscious awareness of those experiences of being on other planes simultaneously and having these different lives, in different places and different things going on. It's pretty amazing experience. And actually, I'll just make a comment that what I really took away from that experience, of that awareness that came in during those times, was really, it's like what I felt in between, which was just that flooding of, there is only love. Love is all there is. Love is like is the everything, and nothing else really matters. All of these things happening, simultaneously. Love is all that there is.
When I have those experiences, and I think I'm going to write all this down, and I write it down, it's like one sentence. And I keep looping. It's the same sentence over and over again, but that's what I want.
Yes. Yes.
Well, it was really a pleasure, this conversation. We enjoyed it very much.
Yes, very much. And if I can just ask one more question to wrap up. Now, because we started out saying that this work, the time is here for this work, and it is for the future generations, for the people who are younger than us, maybe, but who are here and now. How can you see them, or could you advise them on how to use this work to help us to navigate this path forward on this planet that, just from the strictly material human side, seems to be really, you talked about the garden and the hellfire is, for I don't like that terminology necessarily, but just the divisiveness in our world, and that how can we use this as a way, how can future generations use this as a way to really help navigate the path forward that we're on in the time of now?
Right. Well, that's why when I translate, Ibn Arabi is always saying the sisters, Jannat and Jahannam. Those are the sisters, and so we don't have the sort of Christian or other sort of hellfire, horrible brimstone, and all that kind of thing. So that's one of the things that he gives us, a language that's very helpful, very beautiful language that allows us to avoid and clarify things in a beautiful way, so that we don't get stuck with old baggage and things that take place in midnight when there's no light guiding us. So this is a different time. So there's that, and the others, as you can see, that the seekers of this generation and the next generations are coming with very much a direct. They do feel very direct. They don't say that I'm going to preachers and imams and spiritual people who are the head of my religion and things like that. There is a feeling that you can go directly to the source, and so that is the third part of the night, that you go directly to the source. So the way to the instructions are how to go directly to the source in a safe way, and partly it is being very self-aware. So that's also always asking oneself and being aware of oneself, and because there are parts of us that are wanting not the best for us, and there are parts of us which want the best for us. And so how do we work with all of that? We work with our personalities and our character and all of that. So character, that's a very important thing. It'll be understanding myself, struggling with myself, learning about how I do things, when I'm fooling myself, when I'm sabotaging myself. All of these things are very important to understand, because those are ways that clear the way for me to have a direct relationship to the source, a direct connection to the source, and not to. There's the sort of the religions and these other forms. They're no longer able to help me with the things that I'm finding out about. So what do they say about dual time? What? There's no dual time. What do they say about the eternity of that the people in Jahannam have to be having mercy and goodness, otherwise Allah would not have put them there. But that doesn't make any sense. You're supposed to holler at people and tell them that they're not where they're supposed to be, all of that. So we definitely are in an area where we need to have this a language that is suited to the time that we're in. And that's why Ibn Arabi wasn't translated, wasn't really understood. He was implicit in all of the spiritual paths, but explicit in almost none of them, very rarely. And now's the time to come out. Now's the time to speak. I remember many years ago, I read just one line, and it struck me as Sidi Sheikh Muhammad when it said, the time for hiding the secrets is over. The time is to broadcast the secrets, and the secret will protect herself. And I realized that when someone would say, what's the answer to this question? And I would say, well, it's this and that. And then say, well, go back and see what Ibn Arabi said about that. And I go back to a book that I've already published, volume 2, volume 3, open it up and say, oh, that's what it meant. And so the secret protected herself from me, even as I'm translating, publishing, typesetting. I'm typesetting it in design, and the secret is still hidden until, one day I open it up and say, oh, that's what's happening here. So the secret does protect herself. And so it's the time for us to speak out and to speak the secret and let her protect herself, and give encouragement to the people who are ready for encouragement, and to encourage everyone to work with themselves. This is the antenna. This is the receiver of all the things that we need to know. So we need to work with ourselves. And how can I be clear? How can I understand what's best for me and for others? So that's our time now. So it is our time.
Yeah, beautiful.
It is our time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I want to thank you very much. Amany, did you have anything else before we wrap?
We took a lot of time. I mean, these conversations are endless, and be happy maybe to have you again in the future. But I want to thank you very much for your precious time and for the knowledge you shared with us.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful.
Likewise. I want to also, and it's the best way for people to connect with you through the Muhyiddin Ibn Arabi Society website and your YouTube channel. Those are the ways that I know you.
Okay, but the website, thefutuhat.com, thefutuhat.com. That's the best place to find out what's happening, updates, also registration, and emailing me. That's good. And so, so please come that way. And email is good, and then the website, thefutuhat.com.
Okay, and your YouTube channel. I have to put a plug for your YouTube channel also, right?
Yeah, here there's like 70 hours or something. Here we got
yeah, it's a treasure trove right there.
Yes.
Yes, and the books. And I have this book, An Illustrated Guide to Ibn Arabi. This is one of the things that you've put out. Amazing. I figured that the work is so deep, I start with pictures. And
and you can and it's not A to Z. You just read anywhere you want, and it's and I go back to it and learn things. It's so. And what's encouraging is when you read a text that got 800 pages, and you say, "Oh my God, will I ever understand this?" But when there's a picture, you figure, "Well, somebody understood it. It must be understandable. So now let me understand it."
Right. It's a great place to start. Okay. Well, I want to thank you again so much and look forward to being with you in person, Amany, and I will be with you in person for a retreat in June.
Yes. Very good. Very good.
Very excited for that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum.